Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the Voice of Reason. Today, we have entered day 106 of the ongoing war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. We continue to see brutal and heavy fighting taking place all the way from just south of Izum and to the east, a area encompassing from the east of Izum to Severodonetsk, and then Severodonetsk south as well. And that fighting continues as we speak, with very large amounts of Russian heavy artillery being utilized against Ukrainian forces, and then obviously the Ukrainians on their part continue in their attempts to resist the continuing Russian onslaught. And what we're looking at, we're starting to really see things start to develop south of Izum right now. And if you look kind of just south of Izum on this map, you can now see that the Russians have kind of reduced the salient that once existed near Izum, and now you have a broad front to the north, where the Russians are progressively moving in a directional north to south towards key targets, which would be Sloviansk and then eventually Kramatorsk. And we're also seeing additional moves near Popasna. And mainly right now, this involves Russian forces in the direction of Severodonetsk, looking to eventually close the corridor, close the pocket around Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, and at the same time, movements towards Bakhmut as well. But right now, the main Russian efforts appear to be south of Izum. And what I'm going to do real quick is kind of show you the progress, and this is going to give you an idea of the Russian strategy that we're seeing, this slow, methodical, very precise advance into Ukrainian territory, as opposed to these large, deep penetrating maneuver operations by large Russian armored formations. And what we're going to do back is we're going to start going back in time, and it's easier, I think, to once I get back roughly 3 or 4 weeks, to then fast forward, and you can kind of see really how this Russian plan is developing, and you can kind of see these salients that were initially present around May 15th, and obviously it's a big change from where we are now. But I understand that in terms of outward progress, it doesn't appear to be taking shape for the Russians. But if you look at what they're doing and how they're doing what they're doing, it really does start to make a little bit of sense. And here I'm going to now go forward into the future, and you can see kind of what the Russians are doing. You can see the movements around Popasna, and you can clearly see what their military goals are right now in terms of what they are trying to accomplish. And they're really trying to stay away from some of these deep and very narrow salients that we observed early in the campaigns that took place around Kiev. And you're not seeing that in this continued operation. Now, part of that has to do with some of the terrain features. Obviously, the Donets River right now, the Russians are pushing to seize control of all terrain along the Donets River, and then at the same time they have pushed past that, and they do have an established bridgehead south of Izum, and that's the continuation of the Donets River here, and this is more or less the bridgehead that they have gone over the Donets River, and now continue with its offensive operations towards Sloviansk. And you can kind of clearly see that here, reported 1st Guards Tank Regiment. So this map indicates that this is the 1st Guards Tank Army, and probably elements of the 2nd Motorized Rifle Division or 4th Guards Tank Division as well. 64th Separate Motorized Rifle Brigade, 38th Separate Motorized Rifle Brigade, 252nd Guards Motorized Rifle Regiment, and again, these are subunits of larger units, and this has been very common in this campaign for the Russians to create these battalion tactical groups that didn't entirely consist of independent divisions, which operate independently, but these subunits of these divisions, and sometimes these subunits now, these battalion groups are now joining with other battalion set groups from either other divisions or independent brigades as well. Given some of the casualties that have taken place, we have received obviously reports of that ongoing. So it's really difficult to get an idea of the Russian force composition. We've also seen quite a bit the usage of the Russian National Guard. So you really have roughly 3 different military units operating for the Russians. You have the Russian ground forces, you have the Russian airborne forces, you have the Russian coastal defense and naval infantry forces, and you have the Russian National Guard. And then almost separate from the National Guard, but inclusive of that, are some of these Chechen units that operate under the umbrella of the National Guard, but are kind of de facto independent units that at times don't directly fall under the command of the National Guard. And we're seeing some of these battle groups of varying forces, meaning you could see a tank unit from the ground forces joining up with National Guard and quite possibly naval infantry units as well. So it's very kind of a confusing battlefield dynamic that we're seeing right now that is probably unlike certain battles we've seen or wars we've seen in the past. And that's just kind of the way the Russians are operating right now. And again, why they're doing that, difficult to say. Some would say it's because not all of these, for instance, let's say the 4th Guards Tank Division may have not been fully able to deploy all of its units to the front, and we're deploying these battalion tactical groups or these regimental size units as opposed to deploying the entire division as an entity. Or we could see right now large parts of that division operating, but we don't really see it at this point operating in its entirety in terms of cohesion. But that is kind of what's going on right now in the where the heaviest fighting is taking place, running from Severodonetsk all the way now to Izum. And right now, this very large frontal operation you see right now occurring by the Russians is putting a lot of pressure on Ukrainian forces at this point. We are also seeing some unusual activity by the Russian Federation around or just south of Zaporizhia and north of Melitopol. And what we're seeing is we were originally seeing a buildup taking place north of Melitopol in the direction of Zaporizhia, and we received reports that some of these units have been dispatched towards the west, towards Kherson and the directional area of Mykolaiv. So is this a move by Russia that is designed to defend its bridgehead across the Dnieper River? The Russians do control a fairly large footprint to the west of the Dnieper River and wish to remain there. And obviously we have seen the Ukrainians counterattack in some of these areas as well. And just to note that the green areas here were the maximum Russian advance at one point. So you can clearly see the Russian intent prior to certain operational failures taking place, was absolutely looking to eventually encircle and quite possibly seize control of Mykolaiv. And then we also saw further Russian deep maneuver routes to the northwest of Mykolaiv as well. And obviously, since then, the Russian forces have fallen back to more of a defensive perimeter around Kherson. And we believe that the Russians at that point did not feel that they could continue with whatever operational strategy they were looking to accomplish to the west of the Dnieper River, and have decided to just maintain the foothold and obviously continue to control Kherson as well. So these forces that are being moved from the area near Zaporizhia and Melitopol could be simply preparations for further defensive operations, or a possible offensive operation further in the north. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but we still anticipate at some point the Russians will attempt an offensive in the direction of Zaporizhia, again running along the eastern bank of the Dnieper River. We've also heard reports of Russian forces pulling out of Melitopol. We believe these are probably, in all likelihood, ground force units that are being moved to frontal areas of operation closer to the front lines. It would appear that the Russian National Guard and some of these police units that exist are now firmly in control of Melitopol, and the need to have actual Russian Army ground units in Melitopol is probably something that is simply not needed at this point. And we're seeing localized security operations being taken over by other security units, such as, again, the National Guard and some other internal security forces that the Russians possess. And those ground formations obviously are being moved for further offensive and or defensive operations within the context of current operations in the southwestern area of operations near Kherson and obviously Zaporizhia as well. But that's where we're at right now in terms of the level of ferociousness of the fighting. We're really seeing that also being articulated by senior members of the Ukrainian state. They are also saying the same thing in terms of it is a do or die battle right now. They are taking lots of casualties in the ongoing fighting. At the same time, they also report that they are causing quite a few Russian casualties as well. And in all likelihood, I think in certain areas that is absolutely possible. But at the same time, we're not seeing the same types of large-scale maneuver operations by the Russians that caused a lot of those casualties that we saw earlier in the war. Really just a different strategy being used by the Russians at this point. And I think this map really kind of gives you a good indication of what that looks like in terms of this multi-pronged offensive. Again, you have this wide frontal operation that is moving from north to south directionally towards a host of cities and targets around what is shaping up that could become this pocketed force to the east of Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. And obviously you have Sloviansk now directly threatened from kind of the northeast, easterly direction, and north, and possibly as well to the west if the Russians continue making inroads to the west of Sloviansk as well. And again, this terrain is relatively open, and it is not heavily forested once you get south and on the western bank of the Donets River. Obviously, this area here tends to be fairly heavily forested, as it is kind of a river valley. It's a delta area where you tend to get more foliage. and it's very green, and that continues to also be a issue for Russians as we see the Ukrainians deploying these very effective anti-tank guided weapons teams, and they are relatively effective in terms of causing a certain level of casualties. But as I had gone back in time, so to speak, from May to where we're at now and fast forward, you can clearly see that the Russians are making progress. And while it's not rapid and massive progress, it is progress nonetheless in terms of the types of strategy and tactics the Russians are employing, especially with the use of massive amounts of heavy artillery that we've seen the Russians employ. But that's it for right now. We are continuing to watch what occurs, what happens, and then obviously we will bring you more information as we get it and give you analysis in terms of what we're seeing and how things are shaping up for the future of this conflict. Again, thanks for joining us and have a great day.